You got to get really open. The only way to see the whole is to work through it. And people got to work through a lot of self-protection in order to be awake and aware to what is and to how they can contribute. All of the chaos, all of the uncertainty, all of the fear of the unknown, you can say, hey, the one thing I can be responsible for is myself. I can have agency over my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings. I can have authority on how long I allow myself to be afraid. And I can have autonomy in how I respond to what's going on in the world outside of me. Stop judging, stop evaluating, just stop. Connect to your highest self. Who are you when you know you're in a state of joy, peace, and freedom and courage?
Welcome to Leading to Profit. I'm your host, Kevin Bees, and I've dedicated my career to empowering business leaders like you with the leadership skills, performance psychology they need to build thriving businesses. Are you ready for immediately actionable strategies from world-class profit leaders? Let's dive in. This is Leading to Profit. Welcome to episode 267 of Leading to Profit. Today we have Margaret Graziano from Santa Cruz, California. And she goes by the name of Magi, and Magi empowers leaders to evolve themselves and their organization culture to meet the moment. Whether it's change initiatives, new leadership, or cultural transformation, she partners with teams to catalyze positive change. She's the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Ignite Culture. So Magi, welcome to the episode today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kevin.
It's a pleasure. It's not every day we get to speak to a Wall Street bestseller. So let's jump in right there. Tell us about your passion to ignite culture.
So basically, I had a career for 25 years in recruiting. And I got to see firsthand why people leave companies, why they join companies, and why they stay. And when I knew it was time for me to graduate to the next level of my evolution, I wanted to work with companies in building stronger cultures, beginning with hiring. It's a doorway, to culture, but then developing people and then working with them to create this high level of optimizing the collective genius, because mostly companies hire these great people and mostly they don't get everything they could get out of them because they get in the way. The processes, the relationships, the bureaucracy, the micromanagement, the control. And so people, for the most part, when they tell the truth, they're only really optimized in their genius 20% of the time at work. 30% of the time at work, they're pissed off, frustrated, annoyed, agitated, afraid, nervous, anxious. So they're below the power and freedom line. And then the rest of the time, they're just getting shit done, getting shit done, getting shit done, getting shit done. So we go into organizations and have them raise their level of consciousness, which is awareness, personal responsibility, self-control, self-esteem, self-belief. We call it responsibility. And when that happens, they have an emergent culture and they can meet the moment and even be out in front of the moment.
I like that term, responsibility. I think that's a very, very clever setup there. You mentioned something then very quickly, I think you said below the power and freedom line. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, good. So there's 7 levels of consciousness or 7 levels of effectiveness. Dr. Dave Hawkinson wrote a book called Consciousness Mapped. You can all let your fingers do the walking. And really what he's talking about is when we are awake and aware to what is, we're present, we have an opportunity to generate coherence between our thoughts, our heart, and our gut. And when we can do that, we're getting the flow zone. That's called being above the power and freedom line. That's called being in a state of flow. When you're below the power and freedom line, you're tight, you're constricted, you're annoyed or agitated or afraid of something. And so what happens is your brain goes offline. Your prefrontal cortex, which is behind my baseball cap, the executive brain goes offline because you've got a lot of chemicals and hormones flushing in to your thinker, to your brain, called adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, and it takes you below the power and freedom line because your body goes into a state of survival. You are the animal and a predator is coming your way. So when you're a human animal and not a human spirit, you are operating below the power and freedom line. I call it playing racquetball with the curb. Low level thinking, low level operating, low level belief system, just like, I can't see. All you could see is what you see. That's below the power and freedom line. There's no autonomy. There's no agency. There's no authority when you're below the power and freedom line. You're kind of trapped and stuck. It sucks.
Okay. I love that. And so this is, he also wrote the book Power versus Force. This is the same guy? Yes. Okay. Okay.
An oldie but goodie.
An oldie but a goodie. It's, of all of the things I've studied there, I do have that one chart up on the wall that constantly stays there because I guess in that book, he talks about a downward spiral or an upward spiral. I guess we can be in those emotions that you were speaking about before. Like if we're in fear, you said survival mode, fear, grief, depression, guilt, hatred, rage, we're contracting. That's how you describe like we're, and that's when the brain goes offline. But if we can get into an upward spiral, which you're saying is more higher consciousness, we're moving up towards things like hopefulness, optimism, enthusiasm, passion, joy, knowledge.
Yep.
So,
and when that happens, when you're in this state of expansion, you're vibrating at the love and joy level of 550. When that's happening, your brain is completely open. You're ready for innovation, and it does happen. And, I was talking to you about that Marc Andreessen, the race for technical supremacy, global race. Everybody listening, you want to Google that, Marc Andreessen, the race for technical supremacy. It's about globalization of technology and DeepSeek, and how DeepSeek was created by the new generation of people who think collaboration, who think let's do things as one. It's oneness, it's consciousness. But the old schoolers, and you have them and we have them, they're like, we're the world power. No, we're the world power. Sapiens, the brief history of mankind is we fight. And it's, I'm the only. And what Andreessen talks about is that with the opening up of AI open source, it levels the playing field for the world, and it creates more opportunity for all. And if we could just get that, and we still have to be in a race, like you guys have to be in your own race and we have to be in our own race, because let's just say cars are completely an app from now on. And let's just say phones are an app. That's what Teslas are. It's just a big app. It's an iPad with wheels and some stuff. And then he's also saying robots, which are already being mass produced in some countries, just going to be like an app with hands and legs, like your Roomba, your vacuum cleaner. And then the fourth one, I don't remember the fourth one, but basically 4 massive disruptors: automotive, communication, getting stuff done, and then there's a fourth one. But he talked about how even his industry is getting completely disrupted. In the old days, you would meet the founders. If you were a private equity company, you'd bet on the people. And then you'd look at the stats and the data, and you'd compile and do all the cross analysis. He still thinks you're going to bet on the people, but instead of spending 40 hours to analyze the data on 5 startups, it'll take 1 hour. And then the people side of it has to be so much stronger, which brings me to this other book by Daniel Pink called To Sell is Human. And what he talks about is when AI really is full gear, which because of DeepSeek, we are now in a race for technical supremacy. Forget about we'll get to it when we get to it, because any company can be disrupted that quick. And so we have to be on top of it. Anyway, To Sell is Human, Daniel Pink talks about we have to build the muscle of people. So we have to build the muscle of humanity. of being able to affiliate and collaborate, because that takes just as much engineering as command and control. That's the force piece, the command and control. That takes engineering, well, so does collaboration. You have to cultivate and till the soil for this emergence, for this responsibility to occur. And that takes consciousness and awareness. And like I was talking to this group this morning, I think we're up to 10 different companies on there, and they're all bringing in their own experience of culture. And then I bring in a new client and they get to work with me on, they want to learn, this is a train the trainer program. So they learn to do cultural interventions in their company. And we're in there this morning, and one of the women says that, what did you get out of this call today? And she said, she has always done the work with us as an individual to look at her behavior, her self-awareness. But this was the first time that she saw it at a systemic level. And she realized that she not only was having an impact on the people around her, she was having a global impact. Really powerful. So that's, I think, what's going to be really important in culture. And I think there's no time but right now for us to adopt being response agile. Like, we can say, we don't want cloning. We don't want, to grow an arm in a stem cell. And we don't want to have fake body parts. And we don't want to pick the color eyes of our baby or the gender. But it's happening. It's already happening. You don't have to do it. But just like with the word processor, you still have to figure out what's going on and how you can be part of the change.
Yeah, I love that. And I think your final example there about the your client who is now impacting things, you say, on a world level, it reminds me of someone, I can't remember who I heard this from, but they spoke about the kind of 4 levels of leadership. We can be egoic and we're just really trying to take care of ourselves, or we can be ethnocentric and we're trying to take care of like everyone who's kind of in like our race who are the same as us, or we can be world-centric and we're thinking about the best interests of everyone in the world, or it could be, I think the 4th one was cosmocentric, and which you think about all living beings, everywhere, all around us. When you talk about culture and this response agility, I presume the leaders in the organizations you work with, depending on which of those 4 levels they're at and how much they're expanding their consciousness, that's really going to impact the culture.
It does. And in the book, Ignite Culture, my book, the bestseller that you talked about, we talk about that it's a much easier said than done job, because 85% of the world's population is operating in the egoic sense. They're in survival mode. That's the only reason you would be operating primarily in egoic is because you're surviving something. And most of us, from childhood wounds, or just we didn't learn how to see, or we didn't experience joy and unity, and so we don't see it that way, right? Everybody's as conscious they are in any given moment in time, right? People can only do the best they can with the level of consciousness available to them in the moment. So if it's true, if 85% of the world's population is kind of going through the motions, driving to work the same way each day, getting up, doing the same routine, they're in the groove of the neural pathways, and they're just living life, living a good life, but living in the groove, and everything else is going on around them. It takes those people extra effort to knock down the walls of egoicness, to even see that they're in some kind of tribe called their company. And then even to see beyond that everybody they work with has family and has an impact on 50 people, right? And so that really takes a lot of taking off glasses and layers and, you name it. You got to get really open. The only way to see the whole is to work through it. And people got to work through a lot of self-protection in order to be awake and aware to what is and to how they can contribute.
As a leader, let's say that we have that awareness, we've done some of that work ourselves, we've built through that, we dealt with some of our childhood wounds. But then now we've got a whole team of people who are probably in this, maybe, as you say, 85% of the world. So how do we ignite them? How do we help them out of that? Because I guess as a leader, it's probably not my skill set really to, to help them deal with their childhood wounds.
Yeah. So yeah, you actually don't want to be doing that because it's a distraction, but you get really grounded in the vision that you're creating. And then you connect to the people and you bring your ability to connect heart to heart coherence, and you get into a flow state. And then you give them the tools and the resources that they need. So Kevin, when they're below the power and freedom line, they have a life raft, a rope to climb out of that hole. And you can't make them do the work, but you could at least give them the resources. And so one of the things I can do for your group is I have a free ebook called From Friction to Flow. And as a matter of fact, I can put it right up here. They can download that free book. It's fabulous. And it says right here, it says transcending frustration and fear, but really it's from friction to flow. And there's a sculpt process, and we teach our clients and they teach their employees the sculpt process so that instead of being at the affect of all of the volatility, all of the chaos, all of the uncertainty, all of the fear of the unknown, you can say, hey, the one thing I can be responsible for is myself. I can have agency over my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings. I can have authority on how long I allow myself to be afraid. And I can have autonomy in how I respond to what's going on in the world outside of me. And so sculpting allows you to pick the life you want and live the life you want. And when you're off track, sculpting works with you to get back on track. And so here's what sculpting is, because I think that's going to be your next question. Stop everything. Stop thinking, stop trying, stop emoting, stop judging, stop evaluating, just stop. Connect to your highest self. Who are you when you know you're in a state of joy, peace, and freedom and courage? What are you up to in life? What's your aim? What is your contribution? And connect to that. Also connect to the intuition. This is coherence. Mind, heart, gut, connect. Understand what's going on outside of you. What is going on in this situation? Oh, we have robots being created. We have a race for technical supremacy. We have a political agitation going on in the United States of America with Elon Musk and everything he's doing with technology. And then, at least in our country, people are like, why is Mark Zuckerberg involved? Why is Bezos involved? Well, I say, would you want to be left on the sidelines, or would you want to know what's going on? You'd want to know what's going on. And only a fool would sit on the sidelines, and only a fool would think that they should sit on the sidelines, especially if you're in the tech world at all. So back to what I was saying, understand what is going on, what's real, what's propaganda, what's in my head, what do I see, what's tangible, what's real, what's fact, and then understand how I feel about it, and then listen. It's because you got quiet, you connected, you're sorting through situational awareness, personal awareness. Now you're listening. The question you ask is, what do I really want? What do I really need in this moment? And then you listen for the answer. And then you process all of it. And then and only then do you take action. And that, when you're good at it, Kevin, it takes 90 seconds to do the sculpt process. Before you're good at it, it could take 25 minutes. It could take a half a day, because maybe you're sculpting your whole life. But it's an awareness, and that practice builds a muscle and responsibility. And when you can be present to what is without your judgment, emotion, and fear, and defensiveness, and all the other things below the spiral, you can be open to different perspectives. You could be You could hear things you never heard before. You could even come up with an app to make sense of it all, to help people sort through all the volatility, uncertainty, right? Because if you don't want all that change, probably you want to take care of people. You want people to be safe. You want people to be protected. So come up with an app, like do something good with all that energy versus resist and go. What are you going to do? Climb in a hole?
Quick question. Are you leaving profits on the table? Discover where hidden profit leaks are draining your business and how to stop them. Download my free report, Stop Leaking Profits, at www.profit.gifts, GIFTS, and start maximizing your profit today. Now, back to the show. Well, there are many people who do. They pull the covers over their head and they stay there for a very long time. What you said as a model really makes sense. So stop the overthinking, too much busyness there, connect to your higher self. And you know, I think you said when you're in joy, peace, freedom, courage, again, that's like that real expanded consciousness place. Listen to what you really need in that moment and then take action from there. You said something really interesting, and it brings me back to an episode that we had before with a lady called Magda K, episode 235. You described it as coherence when your mind, your heart, and your gut are connected. Magda in that episode 235 really had us checking in. You know, you go and check in. What does your head think about this? What does your heart feel about this? What does your gut feel about this? Now, I've tried this and I practiced this. Is very, very infrequent that all three of those would be in alignment. They typically have different perspectives. So, I mean, how can we help bring those into coherence? Because if your head, your heart, and your gut are pulling in different ways, how do you manage that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, what works for me is I have practices. Like one of my practices is I do something every year I've never done before. So I walk the Camino. By the way, I made friends with 5 Australians. They were my walking buddies for 14 days. I do something I've never done. This year I'm going to do Mont Blanc. I went to the jungle one time for 10 days, 2 years ago. And so that's one way. Another way to generate coherence is to get out into nature and do your processing out into nature, because nature has a very powerful way of getting us into coherence as it is. Another way is to do box breathing, 6, 8, 8, 6. So 6 in, 8 hold, 6 out, 8 hold. And slow your breathing to the point where your mind slows and it catches up with your heart rate. And then you ask the question. So the thing that Magda did is great. Ask your head, ask your heart, ask your gut. But before you ask anything, stop and slow it so that you can get the beating and the brain waves to be in coherence. So have you heard of heart math?
I have, yes.
Yeah, so this is heart math. So it's slowing and getting into that flow. And then the body needs to feel it too. So there's this brilliant trainer named Joe Dispenza. Breaking the Habit of Being You is one of his books. And Joe actually leads meditation retreats where he teaches you how to get into coherence. The name of the game with Joe is don't solve problems. Don't even get up from your meditation until you feel connected to the gut is connected to the heart, is connected to the brain. And then you move into processing.
Okay. That's very powerful. And it's funny, I was just reaching around to my bookshelf. This is the guy you mentioned, Joe Dispenza. So there's so much power in all of this. And I think then as a practical step that you can take when you're listening to this, then get into nature, do the box breathing, go and do that one new thing every year. And Camino and Mont Blanc, amazing. That sounds like really fascinating adventures. And take time to get that coherence, make sure they feel connected. And the heart math, I think probably the way I've experienced it before, you're right, is back to the breathing. Me closing my eyes, putting my hand on my heart and doing some breathing, and then the two can come into alignment. And that's been helpful for me in many ways, actually, and for clients. I've typically used that when I'm about to go and do something like present, on stage, and I'm feeling nervous. And, you talk about that stop, the first bit, the stop, the head is overthinking. That can really run wild then. That really helps calm it down. So I think this is a really beautiful example then. So sculpting, we need to sculpt. We need to get ourselves, from friction to flow. And wherever you're listening, make sure you click in the show notes, and there's a clickable link there to go and get a copy of that. And very generous of you to share that. Thank you so much, Magi. I appreciate that. Now, I've got a million more questions for you, but I know we have a limited amount of time before I need to get you back to your day. So tell us a little bit more, like as leaders of organizations, we can take our team through this. We can help, provide them that life raft, provide our vision, and give them a direction. What else should we be doing to really help improve our culture and ignite our culture?
Well, I think every company at this point needs some noble reason for existing beyond making profit. People need to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And if you want people to sign up to work, do whatever it takes, there's got to be something in it for them. And a noble cause, like my company's noble cause, is to liberate the human spirit at work. And people like doing that. They want to give people freedom and they can get behind it. But I think first and foremost, you need an ultimate intent that is compelling. People need an ultimate intent for themselves. People are liberated. It's my calling. And then my company is taking it to work, like the human spirit at work. When we're we're in a different form of egoic. When we're in purpose, we still get stuff done, but we do it differently. Environment, ask what kind of environment is required for emergence to occur. Emergence is fresh space, clear space, openness for innovation to grow. Emergence is what happens. The Big Bang is emergence, a plant germinating, out of a seed. Emergence, a butterfly. How do you cultivate an environment for that to thrive? And so you have to ask the questions, where are we now? And how do we cultivate an environment of flow? And typically when I go into companies, Kevin, one of the first things I say is, what percentage of time are you below the line? And people say 30 to 40%. When people are below the line in frustration, they're only effective 25% of the time. So many companies, they have people operating below the power and freedom line 30% of the time. What does that mean financially? So you want to understand what's the current state, what's our environment, what percentage of the time are people below the power and freedom line, and what percentage are they above, and tell the truth about that, and then put numbers to it. What does that mean for if our payroll is 4.5 million a year and 25% of the time we lose everybody because they're pissed off, angry, upset? What does that mean to us? So it's really good to not only describe the ideal culture, the ideal environment, but where are they now? So tell the truth about where they're now and how do we get there? And then the third piece is what architecture is needed: systems, processes, structures, rituals, habits, beliefs. But like, what's the architecture required to cultivate that environment so the environment and the architecture is working, like a system to fulfill the intent, like a pulley system, and each is supporting each other. So that's what you need to do. Do you have a noble cause? What environment do you think is required for you to be in a state of emergence, to ignite this response agility inside people? What is that going to take? And where are we now? Where are the gaps? And then what structures, habits, rituals, traditions do we need to make that happen?
Very powerful way for us to assess our businesses right now, wherever we're at. We can go through that. And do we have that noble cause? Are we connected to our purpose? And I meet many business owners who do have that purpose, but they don't necessarily always communicate it very clearly as well. So not only do we have that purpose, but are we communicating that to the team? And that could be part of this this environment, having the right environment. And one thing that occurs to me, often when we think of consciousness and expanding consciousness, it can become a little bit more less like tangible. It's more like a thing. We're becoming more conscious aware. And then when we talk about systems and structures and processes, to me that feels a lot more logical, rational, and probably taking us out of that structure. So really what we're saying though is if we build the right systems, processes, and structures, that allows the team to be free and to be above the line so that they can expand in their consciousness.
Exactly, because nothing happens by accident. If you want people to be in that state, you have to be intentional about cultivating that state. Because when there are no, somebody once said to me at a tech company, better fences make better relations, make better neighbors. Because how to, the ground rules, how to be with each other. Now, you might say, no offenses, but then my dog goes in your yard, pisses you off, it craps on your porch, and, your kid comes in my yard and eats all our apples off the apple tree, or their friend does, whatever. But I'm not talking about tight structure. I'm talking about every Monday morning we have a kickoff. Every Wednesday we check in with how we're doing. Every Friday we complete the week. Every Monday morning we report up to the next level up what we got accomplished, and we're being proactive, and we have these things in place that allow us agency, autonomy, and authority so we can be free.
Magi, that's great. There's a lot of power in that. I know you would probably talk about this all day long, and I know I've got to get you back to the rest of your day. Quite often on the show, we like to ask about the quality. We say the quality of the questions we ask ourselves can impact the quality of the life that we lead. And I'm wondering, what's the question that you've asked that's had the biggest positive impact on your life?
The question that I've asked myself that has had the biggest positive impact on my life. Are you ready? Where am I out of integrity?
Ooh, tell us about that.
So I used to be a seminar leader for an organization that did large group self-awareness. And you can't lead the seminar if you've got a lot of things not buttoned up in your life. So before you can even be a seminar leader, you have to clean your garage and clean your car and balance your bank book and make sure you have no incompletions in any relationships in any area of your life. And if you say you want to be a size 8, are you doing all the things to be a size 8? If you want to be a size 4, are you doing all the things to be a size 4? If you're a dog owner, are you a decent dog owner? Like, if you're a parent, do you spend time with your children? Like, all of it. Because a lot of human beings are very slippery with their word, and they say one thing and they do another thing. And whenever I have gone out of coherence, whenever I've gone into friction in my life, it's because I'm out of integrity with my word. When I moved to California, I moved out here because my ultimate intent, my vision, was to transform people in the places they work. It was to work with CEOs and have them fall back in love with their life again and run the kind of company where people had healthy, intentional, and high-performance relationships. And then I got some feedback or something happened to me, and I made up a story that I would not make money doing that. And I had to have something else that would get me the credibility and would get me the clients. And so I said, I have to create a software. I have to create a software from what I did in recruiting. We're going to call it Keen Hire, and it's going to be the software that made me a top producer in the whole country, top 3%. So I moved here. I had to do this software. I put a bunch of money into it, like almost $1 million. I interviewed a bunch of people. Nobody was right. But I picked one guy because he was running a company that had been there, done that before. They actually had the app on the wall. It looked like exactly what was in my mind. And after seeing that, they've done this before, and they had the visualization on the wall, I stopped listening to all rational evidence of anything that might have been wrong with this guy. Fast forward 2 days before we're going live, he changes my partnership agreement. Instead of 50-50 to 90-10. I was seeing him and he wasn't married, and suddenly he's married. I couldn't see all the signs because I was like, ooh. So, and he didn't pay my partner. She had to sue him for a wage claim. I had to sue him for a wage claim. My son was there when I said I'm going to leave. He said, we have your son, we have your intellectual property, and we have your client base. We don't need you. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. I was so far out of integrity that I didn't even know who I was, because I stopped asking all those questions that had me be such a friggin' awesome recruiter in the first place. I was below the line. I was in friction. I was afraid I would never be able to do my dream job. So I had to create this software. I was operating in fear. So was I out of integrity? Big time, yes. Took me 2.5 years to repair the relationship with my son, to repair the relationship with that person who used to work with me. I had to tell all my clients about it, and it took me that long to get my intellectual property back.
Yeah, wow. And on the other side of that, you had this realization, then you were out of integrity. How did you get back into integrity?
Oh, it's such a good question. This is by far the best interview I've had, Kevin. So good job.
Thank you.
Because this is truly my story. I'd lost $1 million. I needed to do some reflecting. So I did another large group, self-awareness, but not the same one I did before. This one was much more heart-based. And that's when I first learned about coherence. I didn't learn about coherence through Joe Dispenza or Heart Math. I learned about it through something else called LifeSpring. And that was like spiral dynamics and a lot of things. And then I went into visioning what I wanted, which was to lead organizations to healthy, intentional, high performance. That's where the name KeenAlignment came in, because I was out of alignment with my values when I made those decisions. So I restored my integrity by going to that deep awareness program, doing all my work, doing, like, it's not the 12-step process, but it might as well be, really elevating my consciousness, taking responsibility for my impact. And then I got really grounded in what I wanted to create. I hired the best coach on the planet. I got my intellectual property back. In fighting for my intellectual property, I got to own my voice and take on being someone else for a 2-day deposition. And it worked. Like, I took on impersonating Marlo Thomas. And like, I totally allowed a person more powerful than me to be in that thing. And then I realized I was her. And then the weirdest thing in the world, I got an award from her. Yeah, it's very, very synchronistic. Anyhow, and then I started focusing, taking action aligned only with that vision. I wrote an article about why people leave companies. It was about retention, employee engagement, and employee optimization. That article got picked up in a national publication. Some businessman from Iowa read it, gave it to the president, and said, everything she says not to do, you're doing. You better call her, or this job's not going to work out for you. And he did. I got a sheepish email from him and said, everything I could do wrong, I'm doing wrong. Everything in your article, I'm a violator. That turned out to be $1 million client.
Wow. Amazing. What happens when you get back into integrity and you connect in with your values and, you know, your higher purpose of what you want? That's a beautiful example, and it kind of summarizes all the value that you shared with us today very well. What it means for me is I do have to go and tidy my garage. My garage is the one thing that is messy. So if putting that back in integrity will help, then okay, I think that's good. And I think I've heard before, like, the law of correspondence, like your outer world can be a reflection of your inner world, and I guess and vice versa. So as soon as we tidy up that garage, and I guess there's less mental clutter in your brain as well, which takes us back to sculpting. It's going to make it easier for us to to stop the overthinking with a tidy environment. So Magi, this has been amazing. I know we've only scratched the surface of all of the amazing value that you have to add. Wherever you're listening, make sure you click into the into the show notes there and get a copy of the the very kind report that has been shared with us. And Magi, if people wanted to come and connect with you personally, where's the best place for them to come and find you?
The best thing is margaretgraziano.com. LinkedIn is very, 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 very active on LinkedIn. So you can just find me under Margaret Graziano. And then if you're curious about culture, that website is KeenAlignment.com. And that's where that's where I get to do my vocation. That's where I get to work.
I love it. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much for everything you shared today. Did you have any final messages you'd like to share with the audience?
We have a lot of free videos on response agility on YouTube. So find me, follow me, share those videos. We need to raise the level of consciousness in business today, for sure, globally.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything.
Thank you. Bye.
thank you for tuning in to Leading to Profit. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps us to reach more leaders like you who are committed to maximizing their positive impact and profitability. Until next time, this is Kevin Lees, and remember, you stop leaking profit when you're engaged in leading to profit.